the video. You could find me on Twitter, type in Always Irish or at JKZND4. Emails, alwaysirishnD@gmail.com. Merchandise link is below. Audio only. Get me anywhere you want your audio only podcast. Like, subscribe, share, review, write mean things. I don't care what you do. I just like the interaction. So, couple different topics today. One of them is a Notre Dame would you rather question that was posed to me through a listener via email that we need to go over because I don't understand the philosophy of it at all. And the second thing, which we're going to talk about first, is the ACC official schedule is out. And I want to touch on that and give a couple thoughts a little bit, okay? So here's the first thing. The ACC schedule's out. Notre Dame has their 5 ACC games per their contractual agreement with the ACC. Here's the other thing with this schedule coming out. I hope I don't even have to say this except for half joking. You hope this is the only schedule that comes out. You hope this COVID thing and the vaccines and everything doesn't run us another year. But I never thought it'd get as far as it has already, so who knows? But this is the schedule we have to go off of. Let's run with it till it doesn't apply anymore. Hopefully we don't hit that point again, okay? So 4 Notre Dame ACC opponents have byes the week before playing Notre Dame. Now, one of them's Florida State. It's the first game of the year at Tallahassee. I can't really count that as a bye. It's the first game of the year, okay? So then you have that game opening up the season down in Florida. Virginia, Virginia Tech, North Carolina also all have open dates prior to playing the Irish. So what do I make of this? I've seen different opinions from Notre Dame fans on what to make of the ACC scheduling model when it comes to Notre Dame. Here's my thought. I think this is a healthy dynamic right now between Notre Dame and the ACC. And I expect that to continue with Northwestern's AD, Jim Phillips, taking over as ACC commissioner. He's a Notre Dame guy, worked at Notre Dame, has at least 2 kids who are in or went through Notre Dame. So Jim Phillips has respect for Notre Dame. I do not see a scenario where he tries to stick it to Notre Dame or screw them while running the ACC. So what I see here is a very healthy working dynamic. And quite frankly, I have no problem with them building in these byes before their teams play Notre Dame for a couple reasons. Number one is it shows a healthy level of respect for Notre Dame for the ACC to do this, not for their own member institutions, but for Notre Dame. So I find that respectful that they acknowledge you're a good team, you're a big brand name, and we want our teams to take you out. We're going to give them an extra week to prep. So I have no problem with that. I take it as a sign of respect. ACC people might say that's not true. That's just how the schedule is worked out. Whatever they want to say, I don't know if I'm going to believe that or not. There's a sense of, okay, Notre Dame, we're going to work with you here. We're going to let you play a handful of ACC teams, but not make you join full time, okay? But maybe the penalty of that is the ACC is going to schedule it hard for Notre Dame and set it up this way to give North Carolina an extra week to prep for Notre Dame. So I have no problem with the scheduling model. I think it's a sign of respect, and I think that if Notre Dame wants to be in this half marriage agreement with the ACC, I think to some extent there should be some penalty to pay. And maybe it is you draw the short end of the stick when it comes to ideal schedulization of our 5 games with the ACC. So I have no problem with it. I look at it as a sign of respect. And also a little bit of penalization that we're only got 1 foot in the water here with the ACC. So I'm totally fine with it. The other reason, particularly for 2021, I'm fine with this is 2021 to me, in almost every way, is so much more about us and what we're doing than it is these other teams with the reshuffling Notre Dame has going on in the staff, with the roster at all these key positions. I mean, it's not a secret. All of you guys know what I'm talking about with the new defensive coordinator, rebuilding a new offensive line. You're going to have a new quarterback. So with all these things in play, 2021's way more about Notre Dame than it is who we play. The 2021 schedule is the softest of the next 3 years for sure, because we always go over. You get into 22 and 23, you got Clemson and Ohio State both years. Those schedules get real tough real fast. So next year's a softer landing, and I'm really excited to see this latest new iteration of the Notre Dame roster and coaching staff. And I really want to see how next year goes. Is there a big regression, a 2 to 3 game regression as we transition into the new quarterback and new offensive line and all that? Or are we going to be really pleasantly surprised and I'm going to have to eat some of my words and it ends up looking more like a reload than a rebuild? I'm really genuinely interested to see all of this play out in 2021. And here's what I'm saying. Do whatever you want to do in 2021. Try whatever you want to try. Play some young guys. Take some chances. I don't care what you do next year. You got to be ready for 22 and 23. You just have to be ready for those years. When you have the normal teams you're going to start playing again, non-COVID, USC, Stanford, all that stuff. And you're going to have Ohio State and Clemson both years. So work it all out next year. But 2021's way more about Notre Dame than it is any of these teams on the schedule. You got to figure out what your final Brian Kelly run's going to look like as we enter those 2 years with the real tough schedules, okay? So that's what I think about that ACC schedule release. Doesn't bother me at all. I think there should be some tax levied on Notre Dame for only being in halfway. And if that tax is playing teams that are off a week, so be it. When you're Notre Dame, you know you're getting everybody's best shot anyways. Notre Dame is a game circled on everybody's calendar, whether they want to admit it or not. That's the other thing. A lot of these teams, oh, Notre Dame's nothing, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, their coaches have the Notre Dame game circled and highlighted on their calendar, and they're telling the guys, we're going to go embarrass Notre Dame. We're going to take it to Notre Dame. So no matter what they say, for every single team that faces Notre Dame forever, that game is circled on the calendar. That's just the way it is. I like being a target. I like knowing people are coming for us. It's our job not to let it happen and to beat them anyways. Oh, you got 2 weeks off? Who cares? We're going to come in there and kick your ass and get out of town. Here's the other thing. I don't necessarily, with Brian Kelly, believe bye weeks are automatically a good thing. Look what happened with the bye week going into Michigan in 2019. Couldn't have been a bigger disaster. So I'm also not sold on the idea that a bye week's automatically good. Now, it usually is for health. For health, there's no doubt if you got guys hurt, you want them to have a 2-week window to get healthy for the next ball game. I get that. But I'm saying in terms of actual on-field play, maybe for some other teams with elite coaching staff starting at the top, they could use the extra week to do some things. I'm not sold on that for Notre Dame. So I don't look at the bye week as necessarily a negative with these other teams coming up for Notre Dame. Maybe for some other staffs that are more useful on bye weeks, go for it. But for us, if we're playing well, I might as well rather, if the injuries aren't bad, keep that rhythm rolling and go into the next ball game. I'm fine with it. Totally fine with it, okay? So here's one more thing. So we're going to transition out of that schedule and those bye weeks. That's always a big deal for Notre Dame people to see, that it looks like we're being set up. I'm fine with it. I think it's fair, and I think you should be good enough to overcome it. That's my thought. But here's something I was thinking about. And I'm going to be doing a show soon with a professional recruiting person to help me sort through this. But in terms of Marcus Freeman recruiting, I've been texting and talking to people in recruiting as their jobs, not as fans, not as a hobby like me doing this show. It's their jobs to follow college recruiting and Notre Dame recruiting. And I keep saying to these guys, tell me I'm overdoing my man crush love for Marcus Freeman. I keep texting these guys saying, it seems to me like in about 2.5, 3 weeks, Marcus Freeman is casting a bigger net for a bigger group of targets, many of which weren't on the board before. We didn't even know we could go after. All of a sudden, Marcus Freeman is after all these guys. And I keep saying to these recruiting folks, is this too good to be true? Am I overhyping this or what? And I keep being told Freeman is putting on a full court press with offers, evaluations, guys he's going at that are in a different stratosphere than what we're used to approaching at Notre Dame. And I've had a couple people tell me Freeman's kind of walking up to the line and pushing the limits on what's practically possible and feasible for Notre Dame football recruiting. So I have two reactions to being told that by multiple people who follow Notre Dame recruiting, that he's pushing the limits on what's feasible and possible. My number one response is, I love that 100%. I love it 100%. That's what I want a guy to do for Notre Dame recruiting. Push the limits, go full bore, evaluate all your options, put on a full court press on all these guys we usually don't target. So it's exciting to me that a guy has this much energy, comes in, and then right away he's hitting the ground running and doing this good of a job. That blows my mind. I love to see it. It energizes me, and I love it. Here's the downside of this. Why is nobody else on Notre Dame's staff pushing the limits on what's possible with recruiting at Notre Dame? Why don't I hear Brian Kelly's banging down doors and pushing what's possible, expanding the net of guys you could go after, evaluating more guys, putting out more offers, going after guys that we didn't think we were in the mix for? Why am I only hearing that about Marcus Freeman and not 4 or 5 other guys on that staff? That's my question. So, yeah, I love to hear that it's noticeable that the way Freeman's approaching and recruiting at Notre Dame's different than the way the other guys already there are doing it. I love hearing that. But my question is then, why aren't these other guys at that level? This is Notre Dame. It ain't Ball State, Central Southern Community College. Are these other guys just kicking back and chilling? So why is Marcus Freeman the only one on this staff I hear is pushing what's possible in recruiting and trying to get it further? That bothers me. That bothers me. So what I need to happen is, I love this 100%. I need other guys on this staff to sit there and go, wait a second. Now listen, everybody's had this happen. You've been at a job multiple years, whatever, and then they hire the new guy, and the new guy comes in and works his ass off because he's new, wants to do everything by the book and blow everybody away right away. And then the other people are like, oh, seriously, dude, just relax a little bit. Like the Rudy thing where the other walk-ons like, your John Wayne BS is making us all look bad out there. Is this one of those? Hopefully, everybody else on this staff's looking at what Freeman's doing and going, I better up the ante here. I better start offering more guys. I better do more evaluations. I better cast a bigger net for guys I didn't think were possible. So hearing that Freeman's pushing the limits here on recruiting is good and bad. Love to hear it. Love to know I got somebody on the staff doing it, but it can't just be him. I need 5 other guys that I'm being told they're reaching a whole different class of people now. They're reaching a whole different group of recruits we didn't even think we were in play for. I want to hear that from 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in this staff, not the new guy that's been here a half a month and is out recruiting everybody else that's been here 10 or 12 years. Get on it. Knowing that more is possible with this recruiting process is good and bad. It's good to know there's more meat left on the bone without sacrificing academia. But it's also frustrating because I need to hear more than one guy's pushing the limit on what's possible here to get this over the hump. So that's good and it's bad. That's how I read that when I'm told he's pushing what's possible. It's great, and it's an indictment of everybody else not doing that much work as much as he is or as good as he is. Now, I get certain guys, it's just like any sport or a golfer or anything else. If everybody puts in the same amount of work, the guys who are naturally gifted at it are going to rise to the top anyways. I know that not everybody can be an elite recruiter. But when you got that Notre Dame brand behind you, I need to hear more than just the new guys pushing the limits on what's possible with Notre Dame recruiting. So it's good, and it's also bad when I hear this. I need everybody else to get into that level. Start pushing it. Okay, so part 2 of this episode is going to be a Notre Dame Would You Rather that was posed to me through an email from a listener. And I could not possibly disagree with this person more, 100%. Tell me if this makes sense. So I was asked via email, would I trade the 4 straight 10-plus win seasons, 17, 18, 19, 20, for one championship, but all those other years, the other 3 years, would be 3 to 4 losses. So I was asked, would you trade the 4 straight 10-win seasons for one title and then 3 to 4 losses the other 3 years? This is an absolute no-brainer, 100% yes. 100% yes, I would trade this. This person told me no, they wouldn't. They would rather be consistent with 10 or more wins all 4 years, but not win a title. I don't understand this. I don't understand this philosophy. Nobody remembers or cares about regular season wins. Nobody. Don't forget what this is all about. Being the best. Being number one. Winning titles. I don't get how anybody could see this differently. The entire point of this is to win championships. Be the best. Not be pretty good for 4 years. Nobody cares about that. Nobody. Maybe only Notre Dame people. Meaning, some troll on Twitter saying, oh, you guys suck, blah, blah, blah. Sure. Then even I go back at him and say, they've won 10 or more games 4 years in a row, 12-0 twice. They're not bad. They're just not elite. So, sure, as Notre Dame fans, we could use the 10-plus wins 4 years as a factual argument against some trolls online. But other than that, you play to win a title. That's it, especially at Notre Dame. Titles are all that matters. There's nothing else to win other than the COVID ACC year. There's no division to win. There's no conference to win. It's all championships. Nobody cares about you winning 10 regular season games and then losing to a team better than you in your biggest game of the year, or going undefeated, getting killed in the playoff. Nobody remembers, nobody cares about that regular season outside of our own fans. That's it. Nobody else cares. I'm not trying to be pretty good, but forgotten about. I'm trying to be the best and do something that lives on forever. At Notre Dame, it's titles, Heismans, All-Americans. That's what matters. So I can't understand somebody who just wants to be pretty good for 4 years. Let me be the best. You win a championship, then you recruit off that. So then you're not in that position to lose 3 games. So I couldn't disagree more. I am trying to be the best. It's all about titles. If you win a title at Notre Dame, you get a statue. You live off that forever. You don't get that for winning a whole bunch of regular season games and nothing more than that. That's not what this is about here. Where's your compete level that you just want to be pretty good for an extended amount of time but not win anything? Titles. This is Notre Dame. Titles are what matters. That's the goal. Forget about giving up regular season wins. I'd give up body parts for this. So 100%, give me the title and I'll deal with a couple 3-loss years. At least we'd have something in the trophy case that lives on forever, way after we're all dead and gone. That title's still there in the case. Nobody's going to care about 50 years from now. Nobody's going to care about 4 straight 10-win years. It's just going to be a blurb in the history books of Notre Dame. You win a title, it's forever. You get a bronze statue at an entrance at Notre Dame Stadium. It's forever. The players can live off it forever. Titles are what this is all about. I'm not interested in being pretty good or very good, but not winning anything else. So give me the title and I'll deal with what happens after it or before it. It's all about the titles. I want to be the best for some period of time. Not pretty good. The best. The end.